Hello and welcome to this short video training session. In this session we're going to talk about two chefs and an orange. Let me introduce you to Claude. Claude is a Frenchman and he owns a very well-known restaurant. He believes he's one of the best chefs that France has ever produced. However, he's getting a bit old, he's spent many years in the kitchen, and so some time ago he employed Jean-Paul. And Jean-Paul has bought into the restaurant, and the two of them are now co-owners of a restaurant. Now, one particular day, after they had served a very busy lunch and they'd tidied up the kitchen, they both sat at either end of the kitchen, sitting there exhausted. And they looked across the room and happened to notice that there was a fruit bowl sitting in the middle of the kitchen. Now normally this fruit bowl, as you can see here, is full of fruit, which they use for garnishing and all sorts of things in the restaurant. However, today there was only one item left in the fruit bowl, and it was an orange. The two chefs looked at each other and looked at the orange. They looked at each other and they looked at the orange. They both walked up to the orange and without saying a word, both put their hand into the fruit bowl and pulled out the orange at the same time. "Give it to me! Give it to me! I saw it first! No! I saw it first! I'm older! I'm younger! I started the restaurant! I bought into the restaurant!" And they went on for minutes as little children arguing over an orange. Claude, the older and hopefully wiser of the two, said, "This is ridiculous. We have to stop. Here's what I suggest. How about we cut it in half? I cut, you choose. You take half, I take half. Are you happy?" The younger of the chefs agreed, and so Claude cut the orange in half. Claude went to his side of the kitchen, and the other chef went to his side. Now Claude, he took his half of the orange and made a lovely juice, or at least a small glass of juice. And Jean-Paul went to his side of the kitchen, cut the orange once again, and started to create and prepare some zest. It appeared that he was about to make some muffins or some cakes using the rind. So my question is this: did both chefs get what they wanted? The answer is no. They only got half of what they could have had. And this is a story that we use to tell you why it's so important when you negotiate to understand that it's not about your position, but rather about the principles when you negotiate. So let's take a moment and look at what happened in that little situation. One of the reasons why they couldn't decide who was going to have the orange was that they both assumed they wanted the same thing. And how often when we negotiate do we think that we're both wanting the same thing? They were arguing and not relenting because they both assumed each other wanted it for the same reason. And so what happened was, when they started getting into this argument spiral, they both took positions. In other words, I'm older, I'm younger, I started the restaurant, I bought into the restaurant, I unpacked the fruit, I unpacked it yesterday. So here's the thing: whenever you hold a position, the other person who you are negotiating with will often hold a counter position. There's no way you can win, generally speaking, when both parties hold positions. And of course, they didn't ask any questions. For example, one of them could have said, "I know this is a crazy question, but you know what? What do you want this piece of fruit for?" And if Jean-Paul said, "Well, I want to bake a cake, and all I want is the rind," maybe Claude could have said, "Well, that's perfect. All I wanted was the flesh. Could I have a whole glass of juice, please? And then I can give you the entire orange, and you can make as much zest as you like." Some years ago, the Harvard Law School created a program called PON, P-O-N, the Program on Negotiation. And they came up with a number of very powerful principles by which we can learn to better negotiate. Let me share them with you briefly today. The first is that whenever you negotiate, you should always separate the people from the problem. You see, in this case, we were talking about the orange. You see, the orange was the problem. It was the problem that had to be negotiated, not the two chefs. The second principle is to be tough on the problem, not on the person. What happens when we hold positions is we raise our voice, we get upset, we get angry, we start accusing or blaming. Why? Because we become emotional. And as soon as we become emotional, what happens? The other person arcs up. The other person takes a position. Who wins? Nobody wins. When you're negotiating, focus and stay on the issue that you are in disagreement of. Be tough on the problem, but allow the person you are dealing with to maintain his or her self-esteem. Something that you would have learned about if you've been to one of our programs is that you should always look at focusing on your long-term interests, not your position. For example, these two chefs have to work together. They have to cooperate. There's no point them having bad blood for the next 3 years. And you might say, but Paul, it's over an orange. That's true. But stranger things have happened. The fact is, if it's happened once, could it happen again? So therefore, before you negotiate, ask yourself, do I have any long-term interests? If I do, then maybe I should focus on my interests here, not just the fact I think I'm right. Number 4 and 5. Number 4, insist on using objective criteria. You see, there's such a thing as a blue guide or a green guide when you're buying or selling a second-hand motor car. And the used car dealer looks at this guide and says, based on this book, objective criteria, this is how much your car is worth. Also, if you were going to sell your home, the real estate agent would look at other homes in your area and would say to you, similar homes of similar size and of similar quality have sold for X. Therefore, I think your price should be about X also. Objective criteria. And number 5 is to try and invent options for mutual gain. It's not always possible. But what is a good idea is that when you negotiate, to ask yourself, is it possible to expand the pie? For example, how about you have all of the orange and then after you've finished, you give me the rind? Or I tell you what, how about after you make yourself the juice, you skin some of the orange for me and then just give me the zest and I can make the cake. And when I make the cake, I'll give you a slice. In other words, when we sit down together and we cooperate together, is it possible we can actually expand what we have come together to negotiate? And you know what? Often that is the case. 2 books that I would highly recommend to you by 2 professors from the Harvard Program on Negotiation are Getting to Yes and Getting Past No. And for those of you watching this that have an interest in negotiating and you'd like to become a better negotiator, can I strongly encourage you to read these 2 books. In fact, they should be on your bookshelf if you're serious about negotiating. Any questions? Please call me or email me. I would be more than happy to help you in any way I can. That's the end of the session. I hope you've enjoyed it and I hope you've learnt. Next time somebody in your family wants an orange, to ask them what they want the orange for. No, I'm only kidding. I'm hoping you've learnt the importance of principled versus positional negotiating. Until we talk together, please enjoy every success.